I cannot believe that I am one of the only ones, if not the only one, who is somewhat defending the diva of Dump Divas, Cathy Engelbert. And I am not defending Cat because I think she's a great commissioner. Matter of fact, I think she sucks. But I don't understand why some are accusing Cathy Engelbert of refusing to negotiate in good faith, when it's abundantly clear that Nafisha Collier and Brianna Stewart, the duo of divas supposedly representing the interest of WNBA players, it is abundantly clear this duo of divas has a clear conflict of interest, since, they own a rival league and would directly benefit from a canceled season in the WNBA dump. Going into negotiations for a new collective bargaining agreement, I expected WNBA players to be against Cathy Engelbert. I expected whining. I expected incessant complaining. I mean, that's what entitled WNBA players do best. They complain. They complain about travel accommodations. They create stories of mythical racism and complain about those. They pretend to be the ultimate victims of those vicious little girls who support Caitlin Clark. And for decades, WNBA players have complained about their minimum wage salaries. So I expected the players to be against Cathy Engelbert. I expected WNBA players to publicly push for Cathy Engelbert to be fired. What I did not expect, what I did not see coming, was team owners, also known as Cat's bosses. I did not expect team owners in the WNBA to demand the same thing. Cathy Engelbert is standing in the litter box with all four paws deep in shit. She is in trouble. But the problem is, Cathy Engelbert is in trouble. Cathy Engelbert could be fired for the wrong reasons. Back in 2013, I started a new job with the company that I worked for until I quit over 4 years ago to pursue YouTube full time. I was in my late 20s when I started with the company, and there were two older men who worked there that were former Marines. I'm in my late 20s. They were in their mid to late 40s. They looked at me as this arrogant, cocky, incredibly good-looking kid who thought he knew everything. And they made it their personal mission to humble me. Minor mistakes were treated like nuclear calamities. They were constantly overreacting to small errors in judgment. We would have these miserable Monday morning meetings at 7 a.m. on Monday morning, which means I was already dealing with a brutal hangover from the weekend, and I had to sit there and listen to them for 2-3 hours as they relentlessly reviewed every mistake I had made the week before. It was miserable. It was brutal. At the time, I hated them for it. We were constantly fighting. I was constantly arguing with them. But one day, the older Marine told me to come into his office. He said, "Do you know why we are so hard on you? Do you understand why we are constantly up your ass? We are trying to get you to a point where you reach your full potential. Basically, we are trying to turn you from this arrogant kid into a man." I said, "Well, you could be nicer about it." I'll never forget what he said. He said, "When you're in a leadership position, when you're responsible for leading a group of people, nice rarely works. In order to keep people in line, in order to get the best out of them, you sometimes have to be forceful, because most people, they only respond to force." Looking back at it now, those two former Marines did me a favor. I hated it at the time, but they were looking out for me and I didn't even know it, which is similar to what's happening right now in the WNBA dump. Cat Engelbert is looking out for the interest of the league. Ironically enough, Cat Engelbert is also looking out for the long-term interest of WNBA players, and they don't even know it. Make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Earlier this morning, ESPN published an update on WNBA negotiations for a new CBA. Most of the article consists of things that we already know, but there was some new information revealed about team owners and how they view Cathy Engelbert. In this particular instance, I thought team owners would appreciate her. Cat Engelbert is taking all the heat. She is standing against players who are demanding millions of dollars. She is trying to protect the financial interest of team owners who would be responsible for paying these exorbitant salaries. But surprisingly, the owners seem to be siding with WNBA players in their never-ending quest to get Cathy Engelbert fired. Cat has problems with communication. She can be derogatory. She can be a real meanie when she's speaking with our emotionally fragile players. I would imagine that Cat Engelbert can be derogatory. I would imagine it is incredibly frustrating dealing with entitled players on a daily basis who are living in a world of make-believe. Another team owner told ESPN he wanted Cat Engelbert to be fired. There was another owner that admitted Naphisha Collier was wrong for leaking private conversations with Cat Engelbert to the public. But even with that being the case, he still wanted Cathy Engelbert to be fired. What the hell's going on here? Let me make sure I'm understanding you correctly. Part of the reason you want Cat Engelbert fired is because WNBA players think she's mean? I'm sure they think she's mean. Cathy Engelbert is the only one standing in the way of players receiving millions of dollars. But what no one seems to be asking, besides Uncle KC, what no one seems to be asking is why Cathy Engelbert is standing in the way. Why is she refusing to give in to these unreasonable demands? We already know that Cat Engelbert is worried about sustainability. We already know that Cat Engelbert is worried that the current growth of the WNBA is not sustainable. Naphisha Collier admitted that to us last week in her press conference when she tossed Cat Engelbert directly under the bruised caboose. Obviously, this is a logical concern. God forbid Caitlin Clark gets a career-ending or a career-altering injury. Will millions of people still be interested in watching pretend basketball? Well, KC, Caitlin Clark was out most of the season and she missed all of the playoffs. Even with the Rue from Waterloo being out, WNBA ratings were still huge. Yeah, that's true. But what if I told you that might not be the only concern? What if there is something else that Cathy Engelbert is worried about? And what if I told you Cat Engelbert has a valid reason to be worried? Throughout the 2025 season, WNBA players have been on their best behavior, for the most part anyway. Did you notice this season there were minimal accusations of mythical racism? Outside of the first game of the season between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, I can't think of another instance where WNBA players fabricated racism. Did you notice this season there was minimal political activism in the WNBA? In a normal season, WNBA players are giving normal people every reason not to watch pretend basketball. But this season, the activism was kept to a minimum. I wonder why. I wonder if WNBA players were controlling themselves. I wonder if they were mitigating their own risk. I wonder if they were on their best behavior because they didn't want anything to negatively impact their chance to receive millions of dollars. They didn't want to give fans a reason to complain, and they didn't want to give the league any leverage to use against them. As you guys know, the WNBA is an activist league, and I guarantee you, once they receive their money, the disease of politics will be injected back into the WNBA. You don't have to take my word for it. Uncle KC always comes with the proof. Check it out for yourself. Yesterday, Natasha Cloud sent a clear message to WNBA players. Why aren't you using your platforms to spread the woke fungus? Why aren't you using your platform to fight for communism? This is more than pretend basketball. We are fighting for human rights to be oppressed. Although I never agree with Natasha Cloud, I do have a level of respect for her. Natasha Cloud is willing to sacrifice money for her twisted beliefs. She is essentially calling out the rest of the league, along with athletes in other leagues, to be willing to do the same. You know why other athletes stop using their platforms and the league's platform to promote politics? Because it was affecting the league financially. They realized that people were not watching the NBA to be lectured about fake racism. They realized people were watching the NBA to be entertained. The problem is, that has never been the case in the WNBA. Activism always takes precedence over basketball, but the activism has taken a temporary break while they're negotiating a CBA. Maybe, just maybe, Cathy Engelbert is worried about the future. Maybe she is worried that once WNBA players are given guaranteed money, once they're guaranteed to make millions of dollars, they will be emboldened to use the WNBA platform to spread the woke fungus, which could potentially and more than likely will be devastating on the league. If the NBA can't recover from it, how in the hell could the WNBA recover from it? But KC, maybe she can negotiate with players and tell them not to be political. Yeah. How's she going to do that? She doesn't even have the support of team owners while they're negotiating salaries. And even if Cathy Engelbert was able to pull off that miracle, do you really think WNBA players would listen? You really think Natasha Cloud is going to stop being political? Make no mistake about it. Natasha Cloud is representative of the mentality that is prevalent throughout this league. The only difference is Natasha Cloud, she's the only one willing to admit it right now. Once negotiations are done, once the money's in their bank account, the temporary silence will be broken and the woke fungus will be unleashed. Maybe that's what Cathy Engelbert is worried about. Sound off in the comments below. I'll see you guys later.